Alright, hi. So I am Christina Rehnquist, and today I'm going to talk to you about conformity for the popular media assignment that we have this week. I'm going to try to look at the camera as much as I can because I have notes and everything. So when we're talking about conformity, conformity is changing to conform to a social norm, which we see a lot in day-to-day life with social groups, and especially being in the military. I know that I'm active duty Navy. I've been for about 10 years. There's a certain level of conformity that you have to fit in. But for this assignment, I'm going to talk about the film Ford versus Ferrari that just came out a couple weeks ago, starring Matt Damon, who plays Carroll Shelby, and also Christian Bale, who plays Ken Miles. So we also see a lot of conformity in this movie in multiple ways. So in the beginning of the movie, they kind of set the scene with this racer, which is the character of Ken Miles, played by Christian Bale. He's very has his own attitude and his own opinions on how things should be ran, and he doesn't really fit in the racing world. So he is friends with Carroll Shelby, who, of course, if you know anything about cars and the history of the Ford Motor Company, Carroll Shelby was a big hot rodder, and he helped get the Ford Company into racing. So this whole movie is based around the premise of the Ford Motor Company not being able to compete with Ferrari Motor Company in this long race called the Le Mans that is over in Europe every year. So the Ford Motor Company wants to get into the world of racing so they can kind of conform a little bit of their standards and their marketing to strategies to the consumer that is becoming more wanting those race cars and that kind of fast life. And you see how society kind of changes in the 50s from being really family friendly to more of racing and hot rods and how that is cool. So the Ford Motor Company is a little bit conforming how they do business so that they can make more business and more profit. So throughout the movie, you see Matt Damon's character of Carroll Shelby and Christian Bale's character of Ken Miles. They work together, they fight a few times because Ken can't really be controlled. So the first time Carroll Shelby takes over this whole racing group for the Ford Company, the first time the Ford Company wants to take a group of drivers out to compete in the Le Mans, these suits, specifically Josh Lucas, who plays the character of Leo Beebe, who's one of the executives for the Ford Motor Company, he tells Carroll Shelby straight up that he doesn't want Ken Miles there because he is a hothead, he doesn't listen to rules, he doesn't conform to the standards of the Ford Motor Company. So they end up leaving Ken Miles back in America, and they send a bunch of other drivers to the Le Mans race, and no one wins. So the next year, they decide to send Ken Miles to the Le Mans, knowing that he is a hothead and he's not going to conform to the standards, and he's not really a Ford type of person. So that's the whole argument that Leo Beebe has with Carroll Shelby, is that this driver, Ken Miles, is not like a Ford man, and he doesn't conform to the Ford way, and he's basically a marketing nightmare for them. They're worried he's going to say what he's not supposed to say. So they don't, the suits in the Ford Motor Company don't really like Ken Miles. So he goes anyways to the Le Mans, and he races in this race, and he ends up winning the race. So the last couple laps coming up, it's Ken Miles and two other Ford drivers. So Ford is all first, second, third place. Ferrari is beat, but Ken, of course, being the hot-headed driver he is going to keep going, and he wants to win. Well, the suit executive that I mentioned before, Josh Lucas, his character, Leo Beebe, tells Carroll Shelby, hey, tell Ken to slow down. We want all three of the Ford cars to cross the finish line at the same time because it's a great opportunity for the Ford Motor Company. Not really good opportunity for Ken Miles. So here's Leo Beebe forcing Carroll Shelby to get Ken to conform and give up his spot at first and still cross the line with everybody else. So during this movie, that's what happens. So Ken Miles decides to slow down, even though he has about a lap lead on everybody else, and his car crosses the finish line with the other two Ford cars. So the first three cars are all Ford drivers. So in the end, Ken Miles doesn't actually end up winning the race because he conformed to doing what the executives of the Ford Motor Company told him to do, and there was some technicality and he became second place. So that's a good example of conformity. During watching that movie, I noticed that conformity was a huge topic throughout the entire movie. And so that's why I chose that movie for this assignment. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Hopefully that made sense, and have a good day. Thanks so much. Bye.